Hello and welcome. My name is Deborah Ethwin Arbenlow, and I'm a blogger and photographer for Second Life. Today I'm going to show you how to combine images when you have two different wind lights to create an image that has the most aesthetically pleasing look possible. Basically, the prettiest look that you can get. The reason that a person might want to do this is because when you use advanced lighting in Second Life, sometimes the shadows can make your face or other parts look a little less attractive. So here I have my no shadow lighting. The no shadow lighting shows my skin at its optimal look when you have a Second Life system head especially. So I like to have this sort of a face. It really makes it look very clean and perfect and shows off the skin. The problem is, especially with a system head, when you turn on that advanced lighting and you want to add shadows, what ends up happening is you end up with something like this. So this is not really very pretty compared to something with no shadows, and that's mostly Second Life's fault, just because Second Life is not optimized in the lighting department, and also the Second Life mesh itself is not really advanced. It's the same kind of stuff that they had a long time ago. And then even with the mesh heads, the combination of the models and then the lighting not being perfect and then materials enabled, mesh not being ideal, there's a whole bunch of stuff that just makes taking photos with shadows a little bit difficult to make them aesthetically pleasing and have intense shadows or the kinds of shadows you want. So, to combat that, we're going to combine two images that have two different wind lights in order to make one aesthetically pleasing image. So, you can see that I used the same kind of tone in both of my photos. What I mean by that is the underlying tone is warm. So if I used a wind light that had a lot of blue undertones, I would need to make sure that this image, the second image with the shadows, also had the blue undertones. When you combine two images, even if they're not exactly the same, if one is lighter or darker, that's okay because you can adjust that. But you can't really adjust very easily the perspective of the undertone of the image. So I did a video about wind lights that you can look up in my video library, and it shows you how to change your sun and your ambient light. So make sure that those lights are similar in tone. And you probably won't even need to edit your wind lights. You probably can find wind lights that are by default in a similar tone, where you have warm tones or cool tones. Just make sure your images match. Otherwise, you'll make life much harder for yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this image. I'm going to hit Control A to select the whole image. I'm going to hit Control C to copy the image. And then I'm going to go over to this image, and I'm going to hit Control V and paste the image. Let me fit this to screen. Okay, so I have my two images on the same screen, and what I want to do is make a layer mask. And you can pick which one. It doesn't necessarily need to be this as my main layer. This could be my main layer if I wanted it. You choose whatever you want to have as the majority of your image as your main layer, which is the lower layer. So if this is what I want as my main image and I want to paint some shadows into it, but I want to keep this image for the most part, then I have that as my lower layer. If I wanted to keep this image as my main image and then I wanted to paint this image on top of it, then I would use this as my lower layer. So whichever one you want as your main image, the bulk of your image, that should be your lower layer. So in this case, this is my lower layer, and this is my top layer. Now what I want to do is I want to make a layer mask to make this go invisible so that I can paint out sections of it instead of having the whole image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that layer, and then I'm going to go down here to my layer mask button, and I'm going to hold Alt and then click the layer mask button, which is this black circle in the white square. The reason I hold Alt is because Alt makes this image disappear. If I just click layer mask, I went back, so if I just click layer mask, it makes this white layer mask and it doesn't take it out. So what that means is you have to paint onto it to make it disappear. But what I want to do is I want to hold Alt and click Layer Mask because I want to choose what shows as opposed to choosing what disappears. So we're going to take our black layer mask layer, this layer here, and we're going to paint on top of it in white. So we're going to choose our brush. I'm going to go up here, and this is my just sort of a soft brush. I think it's a default brush, so you shouldn't need to get a special brush for this. And then I want to make sure my hardness is between 0 and 10%, very low hardness, because you don't want to have hard edges. And then I'm going to make sure my flow is set to a low percentage. I go for 3. You could go for anywhere between 1 and 10% probably. And then that makes it so that you're slowly drawing out the shadows as opposed to drawing them out very quickly. If I had my flow up too high, and do that. So say I have my flow at 100. When I draw on my layer mask, it's going to pull all the shadows out. And I don't really want to do that. I want to choose how much shadows I want. I want to control it more. So I'm going to set my flow to 3%. So that I can slowly control how much I pull out of these shadows. So now I'm going to keep my layer mask selected, this black mask. Make sure I have white selected as my color. And I'm just going to slowly paint in these shadows. And it's going to be really subtle when you have your percentage this low. I'm going to paint some here. So to choose, let me just show you real quick. What you want to make sure before you go in to start painting is that you have an idea of where you want to paint your shadows. So I know that I want to keep my face mostly clean, but I'm going to want some shadows here in the hair to show where it comes down. I'm going to want under the chin always, here under the underarm, maybe in the arm, these hands. So have a game plan in advance once you look at the two photos of where you want to draw it out, so you don't have to constantly go back and forth between the images. So figure out where you want to pull out those shadows. So let's enable this layer mask again. Alright, so let's keep pulling out our shadows. I'm going to pull the underarm shadows out. Give this photo some depth. That's really the whole point of shadows, is to give some realism and some depth to your image. We're going to want to pull some shadows out of the hands. Pull some shadows out here on the arm, the leg, chin, maybe up here and a little bit on the depth in the ears. So you just slowly pull out those shadows that you want to maintain in your image to give that depth to that image. And then if you need to clean it up, like I do, you can zoom in, and I'm going to clean up this chin here where I feel like I've done too much. So all I do is I switch to black on the layer mask and paint over it. Because the layer mask, the black and white, basically black is what you don't see and white is what you do see. So anytime you want to remove something, you use the black color. Anytime you want to draw something out of that layer, you use the white color. So I'll use the black color and take some of the shadow off the chin. And now it doesn't look like I did a whole bunch, but when I make this look invisible, look at all the depth that I've drawn out of this image. So it started with just something really boring, basically, without the lighting. It's pretty, but it doesn't have depth. So we pull those shadows out of that to have that depth, to create that effect of having the shadows without affecting your mesh, without having this be the face that you see on your photo. And then you don't have to repaint it. You don't have to go through and paint your face back out of the shadows. So all you do when you're in Second Life is you take the no shadow picture and then you take the shadow picture. If you are not familiar with taking pictures without shadows, my portrait video that I shot several months ago does show you how to use no shadow lighting, no advanced lighting. So you can go and take a look at that if you do not know how to do this. And there's also the Windlight video, which will help show you how to make your own Windlights and what Windlight does and how to use Windlight and shadows and all of that. So that is that. That is this tutorial. If you have any questions about combining the Windlights using Photoshop, you can leave comments in the video below. You can send them to me on Flickr, Plurk, or in Second Life. Otherwise, thank you for joining me, and I will catch you next time.